Drives one in the air. Deep right field. It's got a chance. Grand slam. Way back it might be. It could be. Cubs win. Cubs win. Cubs win. Holy cow.
The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with Blake Cowell. You might know him from, he's all over Twitter. He does Lakeshore Radio as well as does Cubs Insider. So, one, congratulations for all your success this offseason. You've been just my go-to for Cubs information, you and Jay-Z. But one, just welcome to the Dingers podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited. Was pumped when I got the message you wanted to have me on, and it is opening day eve. So let's get into it. It's time to roll.
It is time to roll. I like this has been a weird because they're starting so early. I haven't felt like I've kind of gotten the rhythm. It's really opening day until kind of today hit me halfway through the day. It's no, I got to get up early tomorrow because we got a game. All these fake games are done with. The real thing is starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm jacked.
Yeah, it's like Christmas. It's like Christmas Eve. You get to feel young again. There's only golf and Cubs baseball that can get me up at 5 a.m. and I get to at least do one of those tomorrow. And even though it's going to be against the mighty Los Angeles Dodgers, it's Cubs baseball. It's March. I can't complain. It's getting warm. Like I said, it's time to roll. Let's roll.
Yep. I have a tradition that I always grill brats for opening day. And my wife was like, "Are you going to get up at 4 a.m. and grill brats?" Of course I am. We got a tradition to keep going. We got to get up early and let's get this thing cracking.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look forward to those first two games of opening day in Japan. We have Shota Minaga going versus Yamamoto. First pitch is going to be a huge spectacular of Imanaga facing Shohei. What are you kind of looking at that first game? What are your expectations going in to the first game and just for the series as a whole?
The series as a whole, first and foremost, this is highlighting how big the game is growing, and it's how big it's growing overseas, and especially in Tokyo. As you mentioned, I work closely with Jay-Z, and he just came back from Tokyo back a couple months ago, and he comes back, he goes, "Dude, you can't get on a train, you can't walk down the street, you can't pass a billboard without seeing one of these guys on it. Roki Sasaki, Yamamoto, Shohei, Shota, and Seiya, they're all over the place, and Tokyo is kind of becoming the mecca of baseball, if you will. They just won the WBC, and similar to what we see in the NBA with these overseas Euro guys now dominating the NBA, we could be looking 15 years from now, and the top 5 of 10 players in MLB could all be from Japan. That's how That's how it's coming.
Yeah, the pitcher that pitched against the Dodgers for the Tigers. What do you have? 8 Ks, just filth for 5 innings.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed he's going to be the next ace for the Dodgers next year or down the road. But yeah. We have Matt Shaw making a debut tomorrow, getting his first start in the major leagues. What do you expect out of him? Because I'm thinking very first at bat, he's going to get a base hit.
I hope you're right. And the thing with Matt Shaw that at least I want Cubs fans to temper their expectations, because we saw when PCA was kind of thrown into this fire, it's a learning curve. And when that learning curve is starting with the best team in baseball coming off a World Series overseas, I'm not going to be surprised if he struggles over there. I'm not going to be surprised if he struggles for the first month. The Cubs' first month is such a difficult schedule. But putting him at AAA doesn't make sense. The Cubs have an immediate need at third base. Throw him to the fire. He's going to learn. He's going to sink or swim. We've seen in the past, Kyle Schwarber and Ian Happ, they had to go back down to AAA to refine their skills and come back up. And now they're both successful ball players who have gotten extensions with one with the Cubs, one with a different team, and successful ball players. And if Matt Shaw has that, I wouldn't be surprised. But the kid's ready to play. He's not a AAA player anymore.
Yeah, and for me, going into these two games, it's very likely we could go 0-2. It's very likely. My big thing is I don't want to see the Cubs, let's say tomorrow, get out to a 3-4 run lead, and then 7th, 8th, and blow a lead, just give a one away. That's where it's I really hope this revamped bullpen can give Cubs a little bit of assurance right away to start the season. What's your kind of feeling on Cubs bullpen, the moves that they made, Presley at the end? What are your thoughts there?
They did what they could. I mean, you can't fault Jet Hoyer for not trying, because as we saw with the Tanner Scott situation, it was he kind of threw the kitchen sink of what he was able to do within the confines of the Tom Ricketts checkbook. It was the last second ditch effort to say, hey, we'll give you 4 years. And he's like, well, I'll go to the Dodgers. At least that's what was reported. I like Ryan Presley. I'm not going to be surprised if he struggles similar to Hector Neris. I love Porter Hodge. I like Nate Pearson. I mean, they made moves. A lot of the guys that started in the bullpen last year aren't here anymore. So it's not like they're running it back with the same bullpen. I mean, there's still some pieces around, but I think a second season of Porter Hodge is going to be valuable to this Cubs team. I think Ryan Presley at least adds that extra cushion, because if he does struggle, then Porter Hodge is closed in the past. But again, there's no real superstars in this bullpen. There's no Emmanuel Clase coming out in the ninth. There's no Ryan Hesley coming out of the ninth. And that's still a cause of concern for me, at least, but it's what we got. And I'm not gonna root against them. I'm gonna hope that everything goes well, but injuries happen, as we know, and fingers crossed. That's all I can really do at this point.
Yeah, I think the bullpen, one thing is we do have a little bit more depth. We do have some of the, like, Palencia is probably going to start down in Iowa, where last year he got a heavy load in the majors. So I feel like just the depth of our bullpen, we can kind of fill in when those injuries do happen, which they're going to happen. Yeah. Scott from Iowa says we're 4-2 versus the Dodgers last year. He's calling for a clean sweep in Japan. So I would love that because as we look forward to April, like, we come back, we have some spring training games, 5 spring training games, and then we go to Arizona. Well, we stay in Arizona, I guess. We have 4 versus Arizona, and that look into April is a doozy. We have San Diego, the Rangers, the Dodgers again, the Padres again, the D-backs are staying out west, and then we have the Phillies and Pirates to kind of finish that. The only easier team is the A's, and they've improved quite a bit, have some talent there. That's not just a giveaway game to the Cubs. What is kind of your expectations for that first April? What would make it a successful April as we come out of April and get into the summer months?
Keep your head above water as close as you can, because as we know in baseball, and as we've seen with the Cubs the past few seasons, even in 2023, when they went down like 10 games in the division, it took 2.5 months of flawless baseball to get even back in relative contention for September. They can't go down 5 games to the Brewers in month 1. It's just not where you want to be. And in a season where they have to have it. Jed Hoyer's job is on the line. Craig Counsell has job security, but we're paying him so much money to be an asset to get us over the hump. We got to see some more stuff from him. I mean, as far as April goes, keep your head above water, play clean baseball. We saw a lot last year, and I think a lot of that had to do with Christopher Morel and some other guys just playing kind of out of position. You got to play cleaner defense. You can't run into outs. You got to play opportunistic baseball, situational hitting. I mean, you got to play the brand of baseball that Craig Counsell is used to coaching with Milwaukee, and they just didn't do that last year, at least toward the end. I mean, April, they set the franchise record for most wins, and then the wheels fell off after. But if you can knock out some good series wins here in April, I mean, that'll set up for some easier series, in theory, down the road.
Yeah, my thing is just if we can just stay 500 for the month of April, and maybe even take some series, take a sweep of the D-backs. There's a 2-game set with the Dodgers later at home that we take those. And that would set us up for that success later on. Now, the big thing for me too is just let's be injury free going through April. Like,
Amen.
I look at that starting rotation, and we're looking at the 5th star spot. We don't really quite know who that is. It could be Ben Brown. Probably leaning more towards Ben Brown. Going to probably get that, which I'm all excited for that. Like, yes, yeah. Ben Brown is legit. Let's get him in the rotation. And we are pretty deep there, but we're deep in a way that is pretty mid. We don't have, if I look at if Shota, Steele, Tyone go down, there's nobody of that caliber to kind of fill in, and then it gets pretty weak. So like, especially with our starting rotation, I want to see injury-free April, and even if we have to go to a 6-man rotation there for a little bit, I'd be okay with that. Save on the innings on Imanaga. What are your thoughts with that of like our starting rotation?
Yeah, this was my biggest gripe with Jed Hoyer this offseason was just he didn't do enough from the starting pitcher perspective. And like you said, if Shota Imanaga goes down, and we hope he doesn't, or if Steele goes down, Jamison Tyone's not a number 2 starter, and everyone moves up a slot. Like, it's not like you're just adding a guy on the end. Like, everyone moves up a slot. Like, if the playoffs were to start, Jamison Tyone's your game 2 starter, and that's not a playoff team. It's just not a playoff team unless your offense is crazy talented, which they have the potential to be, but you still need starting pitching. From a talent perspective, Ben Brown, I think, will eventually get there. He has all the raw talent abilities. His season was cut short last year, so health is, a minor concern because he's only pitched 2 months in the major leagues. Like, that's a small sample size for anybody, and especially a starting pitcher who only got 3 or 4 starts and 7 or 8 appearances, whatever it was. Colin Ray is going to eat innings down the stretch. I guess they're in talk still with Lance Lynn. I mean, that's not anything to write home about. But you're right. And, Javier Assad, he's another guy. Jordan Wicks is another guy. Like you said, it's kind of it's a band of mid-tier pitchers. And I think this season, at least for a guy like Jordan Wicks and Ben Brown, you need to figure out what you have in these guys because Jordan Wicks was injured last season. But his rookie season, he was pretty good. And he's got good stuff. And I think he can be a solid pitcher, especially with the investments they made this offseason, bringing in Tyler Zombro, fortifying their pitch lab that they write home about so much. It's not something that I am super concerned about right now at this time because nobody's injured. But when that first injury happens, because again, we know it will, that's where it's time to kind of, cross your fingers and toes because, again, you got to cover at least 1,500 innings here in an MLB season. Who's going to eat those innings if a guy like Justin Steele goes down, who can realistically give you 180 of those, or a guy like Shota who can give you 175. Like even a guy like Colin Ray who can eat innings. I mean, he's an innings eater, but if you don't have that guy and he goes down, Javier Assad struggles to get to inning 5. He's not going to be eating those innings, and now you're lengthening your bullpen, and you have swing guys come up and down. So I mean, it's definitely something at least Cubs fans should watch as the season progresses. But if I had to pick today, I'd love to see Ben Brown do it. I think he's a talented guy. People love his off-speed stuff. I think he still needs to develop a third pitch, which he's been tinkering with this spring training with that changeup. So that'd be an interesting thing to watch. So I hope it's Ben Brown, but who knows?
You talk about eating innings, and the pitcher that we did add into the rotation is Boyd, and he has looked filthy. The other day in Japan, looked nuts from the 6th inning on. I think he finished like 6 straight Ks to finish or like something like that to end the game. Filthy slider, but he's one that's also coming off injury that we're probably going to have to limit the amount of innings that we put on him, especially at the beginning of the season. So that's where do we go to a 6-man or do we kind of fill in maybe with when Assad comes back from injury that he plugs in there and maybe gives Boyd or Imanaga a rest because they kind of did that a little bit with Imanaga, moved him around on rest days. But I do like Boyd. I am very high on him. I think by the end of the season, he will be kind of move ahead of a slot of Tyone in that guys that we can kind of trust to get us out and get us a win when there's the guy like, hey, going to get us a win, or it's like a slump stopper when put him in there. He's filthy. Like he's impressive. The way he ended it with Cleveland and now come back to us, like he's looked absolutely filthy. Are you as high on him as I am?
It's health. It's the biggest concern. I think that if he's able to stay healthy, I mean, there's a reason the Cubs gave him $15 million a year. And as we've seen with the Cubs in the past, they like going for those guys where they get the value deal. Like Seiya Suzuki is getting paid $18 million this year to be, potentially a 25 home run hitter, middle of the lineup kind of guy. Like that's a good deal. Ian Happ, 3-time Gold Glover, 4-war player, making $19 million, $20 million. That's a good deal. I mean, if you look in the future here and Matthew Boyd stays healthy, he pitches 140 innings, has a 3.4 ERA from the 4th pitching position, getting paid $15 million. In this starting pitching market, that's a great deal. And he's got good stuff. Like you mentioned, again, it's just the health. He hasn't gone over 100 innings, I think, in his career, maybe his rookie season. So, I mean, I'm, again, the starting pitchers here, I'm high on him if he can stay healthy. But, again, that's a big if, and that's a big caveat for a lot of people on this Cubs team.
You talked about we have Jed Hoyer on a 1-year deal left. We have a plethora of players on 1-year deals. How important is this season as a whole for the Cubs, not only for those guys individually, but the Cubs organization as a whole? Do you see this as like a make or break kind of year? Where are you at with this?
For the people who know my content and followed me for a while, they should know I love Jed Hoyer. I think that for what he's been given, he's done pretty well because, as I've said, the next guy's not going to get a bigger budget from Tom Ricketts. It's not like he doesn't like Jed Hoyer to give him more money. He doesn't want to give him more money because he's pocketing the rest, or he's giving it to other assets or other business ventures. So if you look at Jed Hoyer's tenure, he's had 2 winning seasons in a row. I get it. They're 83 wins, no playoffs. That's not good enough. I get it. But he says, you know what? You're gonna put me in a desperate position. I'm gonna do something desperate. I'm gonna go trade for Kyle Tucker for 1 year. I'm gonna give up our 3rd best prospect, or Camps, give up a pretty solid package to get an 8-WAR player or potential 8-WAR player that can get me to the playoffs. And then at the end of this season, if you want to fire me, that's cool. But that big move I just made for Kyle Tucker, that's on you if you don't want to pay him. If you don't want to write the check for $450 million, this whole city's going to know you're the problem, not me. And we'll shake hands and go the other way. I think the Cubs are good enough to make the playoffs, but like you said, if they don't, I mean, heads will roll, and I would hate to see Jed Hoyer get fired for something that I think is, for the most part, out of his control, and the next guy might come in and say, we're going to tear this thing down and rebuild it, because the Cubs still have the 8th best farm system. I mean, Matt Shaw is going to graduate, so they'll go down the rankings, but they still have Owen Casey. They still have Ballesteros. They still have Cade Horton. There's still pieces to come up and kind of round this team out in a weird way, even though there's a lot of people on a 1-year deal that might not be here next year or the year after.
Do you think the Cubs will pony up the money for Kyle Tucker?
I mean, if right now sitting in this chair on opening day eve, I would say no. But like I've mentioned before, when Theo Epstein in 2015 got so close to the World Series, I mean, that 2015 got so close. If the Cubs get so close, what's the difference between Jed Hoyer going to, or Theo going to Tom and saying, hey, man, I need a guy like Jason Hayward to sign to $180 million. What's the difference if Jed Hoyer goes, hey, man, I mean, I get the difference might be $250 million, but with the cap going up and teams making more money, he said, hey, I need this guy. If the Cubs go to the NLCS this year, or make it, maybe they run into the Braves or the Dodgers in a 5-game NLDS series this year, and they say, hey, we're right there, man. Like, give us Kyle Tucker. Cade Horton could be on the brink of stardom. Matt Shaw could be on the brink of stardom. PCA, I think, is going to be a star. Like, they're right there, but this is a developmental year for those guys, while guys like Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, and Kyle Tucker really need to man up and show why they're veterans in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, that's where, like, I'm sitting, like, I'm kind of torn. And I'm not as, I think, against Ricketts, because I think he has to speak to investors also. So it's not necessarily, I don't try to put all the blame, just like I don't put the blame on Hoyer. I don't put the blame all on Ricketts, because I feel like he's handcuffed a little bit to these other investors that are also telling him what he can spend money on, what he can't. But I want them to make the playoffs or get really close, because I think then Ricketts' fandom, just like in 2016, when his fandom turned on, it's like, no, I want to win. I'm going to go make the trade that I need to and get Chapman to push us over the edge. Same thing. I want his, like, to us this year to spark his fandom again.
Yeah.
To, like, make him pony up the money and no, I will pony up the money. Who cares, investors? I'm going to go do this. But Jed has kind of played these cards really well. Like you said, it's put it where at the end of the day, if they don't, it's all going to be pointed at Ricketts and not Hoyer. And it's well played for Jed Hoyer. How concerned are you, though? We're talking about Tucker and signing him. How concerned going into the season are you that he only has 1 hit during spring training?
Not concerned at all. If again, here's how the spring training stats roll for me. If they're really good, it means that they're going to roll into opening day and kill it. And if they're not, it doesn't matter. The games don't count anyway. So at least on the Kyle Tucker front, I'm not worried. I mean, this dude could wake up tomorrow and go 3 for 3 with 2 doubles and a home run, and no one forgets what just happened the last month and a half. So I mean, and again, he's going to a new team. He's settling into his own with new guys around him, camaraderie. Lots probably going through his head. He's like, am I going to be here next year? I mean, he's probably thinking about that. I mean, he's going to tell the media like, I'm focused on this year, because he has to say that. He's not going to say I'm not signing an extension. I'm not doing this. There's probably a lot of this offseason that went through his mind, and now he gets rolled into spring training, and he's struggling a little bit. So what? He was injured last year a little bit too. He's going to get that live ABs tomorrow where it really matters. And these guys are gamers. I mean, you can't tell me that they walk into spring training, and even a guy like Kyle Tucker, who's a veteran, he's not walking into every spring training at bat thinking, this matters and I have to perform. And I have to. He's like, what? I want to see where the ball is coming out. I want to recognize spin. I want to work on some things myself to get ready. I'm not concerned at all. I mean, are you in any way?
No. Yeah. He's a professional. Spring training is used to get your timing. Like I've listened to Compound. You've listened to Ian Happ talk about like last year during spring training. It came to I think the second to last spring training game before Ian Happ even said like, it was when I barreled a ball, hit a line drive out, that I finally felt like, okay, now I'm ready. And it's like, it sometimes takes time. Like in one swing could change that whole thing. So I'm not concerned about Kyle Tucker. I feel like he's going to get a hit one of the first 2 games. Like it's going to be a key hit. So yeah. I'm confident in the dude. What's your bold prediction for this series? Like one big thing that you think could happen?
My one big bold prediction, I was thinking about it today because I was like, I want to come up with something that, might not be too hot takey, but something that still, we can take home. I think PCA leaves this series not a Cubs superstar, but an international superstar.
Ooh, love it.
He's so fun, not just to watch because he's a demon on the base paths, but I mean his personality shows. I mean, the dude has stars on his head right now. I mean, he's a Dennis Rodman-esque character where it's like this guy's not only a baseball player, he's something else on the side. And again, we talk about this is highlighting Japan. This is highlighting the Japanese superstars. Well, I mean, you see this speed demon running around, diving for balls, stealing third base, and guys are overthrowing it, freaking out, and he's jacked up on the sideline, and he's jumping up and down in the dugout. Like, I think that as a baseball fan, even in America, you love it, and I think overseas they're gonna be like, you know what? They probably like that too. So PCA international superstar come Thursday after he has a great series offensively and of course defensively.
I love it. I mean, you saw them even chanting PCA.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah. Do you think so? I heard an interview where he was talking about the stars, but Shota said that he should dye it blonde and then put a red dot like the Japanese flag. Do you think he's going to come out with that tomorrow?
He's a man of the people. I say he does. I say he gets out there, maybe pulls his hat off when he runs at the center field, or maybe pregame he debuts it. But if I had to guess right now, I think he does. He's that level of fun.
Yeah. No, I love PC. We had Locked On Cubs last week on, and I was talking about there hasn't been a lot of guys in the last 5 or 6 years that I've wanted to buy their jersey or buy my son their jersey, or just because it's I don't know how long these guys are going to stay around. It's not like the Bryants and the Schwarbers or back in my day, the Sosas, but PCA is one of those guys that you're he's different. I have a Javi Baez jersey because he was different. He brought something to the game that no other Cubs player brought. All right, this year I might buy my son that PCA jersey that he wants because he does so many things that get people to fall in love with the game of baseball. It's what baseball needs more than anything when so many kids look at baseball as boring. You watch PCA play for a while and no way is the game boring. So I would love for him to do something crazy. hose a guy at home, steal a couple bases. I don't do something crazy. So that's the one that like I'm looking forward to.
What about you? What's your bold prediction? What do you got lined up for us?
I'm gonna say that Matt Shaw hits a 2-run double that wins the game, that puts us up. We're down by 1. He hits a 2-run double and puts us up in one of the games.
There we go. I love it.
I listened to your guys's your Twitter Spaces, and one guy called in and called the say a home run, that he's gonna hit a home run.
Yeah.
Yamamoto and his second at bat.
Second at bat, not the first one, not the third, the second. So we're watching for that too for our guy Jack.
Yeah. So I would love that to happen also. What's your prediction on this season? How many wins do we end with at the end of the year?
We were talking about it last night. Last year, I put $1,000 on over 83.5 wins. They finished at 80. So I can't put any money on it this year because I think I might have been the bad luck for the other 4 or 5 that we needed to get into the playoffs. Here's the thing. I think the Cardinal way got rebranded to the Brewer way because they just do everything right. I don't get it. I don't like, even when they show up on opening day, I don't know half the players in their lineup because I just don't care because they come out of nowhere and they're so good. But this Cubs roster is simply too good to not win the Central. I think I'm going to put them right at 90 wins, right on the dot. If they don't get to 90 wins and if they don't win the Central, I don't think they make the playoffs because this NL it's stacked with some pretty good lineups. I mean, you have the Dodgers, of course, but you also have the Padres. The Diamondbacks made a lot of good additions. You have the NL East with the Braves, the Phillies, and the Mets. I'm skeptical on their starting pitching, but their lineup's phenomenal. There's a lot of good teams this year, so I'm going to pick the Cubs at 90 wins and winning the Central. I got to stick with it, but I'm not as confident as I'd love to be. I was more confident last year than winning the Central, and they lost it by 10, 12 games. So, but like we said, it's do or die. There's no tomorrow, so we got to get it done in the big 2025.
I have them right at 90 also.
There we go.
That's what I had.
Good sign.
I was like, okay, 90 I think is very doable. This Cubs offense has to be better now that we have a star to sustain that offense. We're not going to have those 2-month stretches where we're just dead in the water, no life in the offense. And even that, if we just took those 2 months, the last 2 years where we've had those 2 months of dead offense and won like 4 or 5 games in those 2 stretches, that totally changes the outlook of the whole season, and we make the playoffs. And so I'm looking with, now that we've talked a lot about on our podcast that we have had a lot of E-list and C-list stars. We've never had that A-lister, and now we finally have that A-list star to sustain our offense. So I'm looking for that carryover, and it lengthens our offensive lineup. Now we have PCA in another year to get take that next step. That's where he's done in 7, 8, 9. In the last 2 years, that's been like just straight up outs.
Yeah,
we don't have a Yan Gomes. We have Amaya, who took a huge leap forward last year.
Saved his career in the second half.
And Carson Kelly, like, I think that is a great pickup. I think he's going to kind of turn it on a little bit offensively this year. And so that's another one that just, it lengthens our lineup a little bit more. And I do think that Dansby Swanson is going to take a big step this year. I know last year with the hernia injury, you could just see he just wasn't playing. And with him back maybe to full health, that's only going to help this lineup, and we're going to put up the run. So that's where I could see us being one of the best offensive lineups in the National League, and I could see us being one of the worst offensive lineups in the National League. But I think it's going to either be that. So, So I got him at 90 as well. Scott has him at 80, 87. Scott from Iowa. So
that's the over.
That's the over.
That's the over.
Bet it, Scott. But yeah, Blake, thanks for jumping on. Where can they find you on social medias and get you a follow?
Yeah, you can follow me on Blake Cowell X, predominantly on X, but also Blake Cowell X on everything. Been doing a lot of video editing, so get my Instagram and my TikTok up as well as follow Cubs Insider. Recently partnered with them, do a lot of video editing for them now. So that throughout the season. Twitter Spaces every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, kind of wrapping up the Cubs week and looking ahead. That's me and Jacob Zanola. So you can find me all over, but predominantly on X. So.
Yeah, and I encourage you guys, jump on his Twitter Spaces. If you have a question, you can jump on and talk and ask them guys their thoughts and do a little kind of like wrap of the week and preview of the week. So yeah, really encourage, be a part of it. That's what's so great about the Cubs community. And like, that's why we kind of started our podcast. We wanted to be able to sit and talk with other Cubs fans, and their Twitter Space is a great opportunity to do that. So encourage everybody to do that with them. So, but thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dingers podcast. Thanks, Blake, for jumping on. But we gotta end because we gotta get some shut-eye because the Cubs play a meaningful baseball game tomorrow, bright and early at 5 a.m. So get your coffee ready, preset the pot, start that coffee early, get up, and I'm gonna start grilling early. So go Cubs.